Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started today. Um, so first off, I want to thank everybody for coming today. My name is Clayton Black. I'm a regional E-team leader for the Partnership for Connected Illinois. We have a slate of 3 Illinois speakers ready to present on their successful fiber projects. Once again, as we said in the last webinar, we appreciate Broadband Community's decision to come to Tinley Park in November for the upcoming Broadband Communities Conference and for giving us an opportunity to tout and build on some of the successful public and private broadband investments in the state of Illinois. We're excited to partner with them in this endeavor and hope this webinar can help jumpstart the conversation on just a few of the concepts that will be discussed at much greater length at the conference. So with that, just as an FYI, you are welcome to use the chat box in your GoToWebinar panel and ask a question at any time during the presentations. We will save time for Q&A at the end of all 3 presentations, and we'll save questions for that time. I would also like to add that Rick Serafini, who was part of the original program for the webinar, was a late scratch from the agenda, so that will allow a few extra minutes for Q&A. But he will be part of the actual conference, so save any questions you may have for him for at that time. Also, the slides and recording of the webinar will be available at broadbandillinois.org at some point in the next couple days. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it to Jeff Ryman, President of Broadband Communities, who will help to begin the discussion.
Great, thank you, Clayton. Can you hear me okay? All right, thank you again for joining us on the second and final pre-conference webinar as we head into the upcoming Broadband and Economic Development Conference, again this November 5th through 7th, so just a few weeks out, at the Tinley Park Convention Center in the Chicago Southland, which is just there south of the city. For introduction and background, my name is Jeff Ryman. I'm the president of the conference host, Broadband Communities. Broadband Communities publishes magazines and primers aimed at educating readers on the business and benefits of advanced fiber-based broadband infrastructure. I'll add that subscription to the magazine and electronic newsletters is complimentary. If not already a subscriber, I certainly encourage you to please visit our website and sign up for your free subscription. It's bbcmag.com. In addition to our publication, we of course also host conferences and seminars around the country. The upcoming event in Tinley Park is the second of our Economic Development Conference in the series. The first was held last fall in Danville, Virginia. What is relevant to note is that we not simply choose to host this conference in Illinois in the Chicago Southland by chance. We did so because the state, and specifically the Chicago Southland's commitment to broadband excellence, highlighted by the Chicago Southland Fiber Network, is commendable, and it should serve as a model that can be replicated nationwide. Thanks to the efforts led by Governor Pat Quinn, the Partnership for Connected Illinois, and countless other organizations throughout the state, Illinois can now boast numerous communities that have taken an active role in deploying their own networks, or that have recognized opportunities to collaborate and partner with their local service providers. Local service providers who now more than ever are willing to begin or extend fiber broadband infrastructure deeper into the communities that they serve, all with the goal of advancing the connected agenda of every aspect of how regions now live, learn, stay healthy, and remain productive in the early stages of our new digital world. While the conference will go into much greater detail, as Clayton mentioned earlier, today we are very pleased to have with us 3 great presenters highlighting projects underway throughout Illinois that will serve as a tool to create jobs, promote commerce, enable advanced telemedicine applications, distance education tools, precision agriculture and farming, home entertainment, and of course projects that will promote economic development. While strategies of these projects may differ, the single commonality is the recognition that fiber-based broadband networks are the key to positioning the community to thrive in the emerging digital economy. In terms of our speakers, representing the Chicago Southland Fiber Network and the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association is Project Coordinator Rusty Winchell. From NIU is Matthew Parks, who serves as the Senior Director in Communication Services at the university and will be discussing broadband initiatives throughout the state, including the Illinois Rural Health Net. Illinois Rural Health Net head Roger Holloway will be leading a telemedicine workshop on Tuesday, November 5th at the conference. That begins at 12 noon for those that are interested. Concluding will be Zach Horn, President of Metro Communications Company, located in Sullivan, Illinois. In terms of the format for this webinar, each presenter will go through their presentation, and then at the end of all 3 speakers, we will open up the floor for Q&A. So thank you again for joining us. Hope to see everyone November 5th at the conference. Quick note, registration rates will increase next week, so if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and register today. And with that, I will hand the floor over to Rusty.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm glad to be with you on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I would like to talk a little bit about the Chicago Southland Fiber Network project and to add on to what Jeff said in his introduction. Ed Pazel, Executive Director of South Suburban Mayors and Managers, who is the lead entity in the Chicago Southland Fiber project, and myself, and attended the Danville, Virginia conference last year. And as Jeff said, it didn't happen by accident. Ed Pazel was very impressed with the conference that Broadband Communities put on in Danville and said, we need to have this in Chicago. This is what we're trying to do. We would like to continue the conversation on a more local basis. And as a result of Ed's leadership and advocacy, we are seeing the Broadband Communities Conference come to Chicago Tinley Park in the first week of November. And so thanks again to Broadband Communities Magazine, to your work, Jeff, in helping to bring the conference here. The Chicago Southland Fiber Network is a state of Illinois funded project. As the first slide shows, there's three primary entities that brought this project off of the ground. Cook County and SSMMA had partnered as part of the second round of BTOP fiber project, and were not selected even though we made it through due diligence for that second round of BTOP funding. And we chose then to lobby the governor's office and ask that the matching funds that were committed for the BTOP project be left in the funding mechanism and be provided in the form of a grant in order to get a pilot footprint started in the Chicago Southland Fiber Network space there. The map that you see is the initial fiber footprint. The red line through the center of the map is the I-57 corridor. We were able to put in about 27 miles of 144 strand fiber north to south, and then there are 18 communities that border either side of I-57 that will have fiber connectivity either to municipal centers, to places like the Tinley Park Convention Center, Governor State University, South Suburban College, Rich School District, the Union Pacific and Canadian National intermodal yards. Those anchor institutions and those anchor points that could greatly use broadband connectivity to support their business and to support their mission in the Southland. Next slide, please. The state of Illinois Jobs First grant that is funding this project is building 27 miles of fiber north to south. As we pointed out in the map, there's 35 miles of fiber laterals serving the other anchor institutions alongside that backbone fiber. We are IRUing fiber to get out of our primary local distribution footprint back into places like Equinox at 350 Cermak, into the peering site in Oak Brook, Illinois. While it doesn't provide us with full redundancy, since we don't have a closed ring in the fiber footprint, it does provide us some redundancy and backhaul capabilities for the network. Next slide, please. The network, as it's being configured today, is a result of four key items there. As you can see on the slide, the first component was vision. SSMMA provided that vision and provided that mission for the project. Part of that vision resulted in some deep preparation to put together a project to implement. That preparation included talking to over 450 separate institutions across the Southland area, finding out what they were doing today, finding out where they wanted to be in connectivity and data communications, and documenting that in order to prepare the ground both for a project and to prepare the supporting documentation that would take to justify spending the dollars in this area. The opportunity presented itself in a couple of forms. We had, as we had mentioned earlier, a lot of practice on the first 2 rounds of BTOP application to work the opportunity side, and through, again, advocating for the SSMA area with the governor's office, provided us then with the opportunity to execute. We took all of that background material and we looked at where we could get the most bang for the dollars. Up the I-57 corridor, and put together a project very quickly then that we could execute on. We are in that stage of execution now with approximately 50% of the fiber in place and tested for the overall project. Next slide. One of the things that we were able to do, since the matching funds were nowhere near the original request, is that we were able to work with the state of Illinois and with the CMS group, Central Managed Services from state of Illinois, and we're able to leverage some of the preliminary work that they had done to execute the north to south backbone network that was funded through the BTOP program for them. We were able to use some of their engineering documents and do construction concurrently with them along the I-57 corridor, and it cut our costs for at least that primary 27 miles of backbone to about 25 cents on the dollar we would have needed to have spent otherwise. The note there at the bottom about additional $10 million in Cook County broadband funding. That funding was committed by Cook County to be spent on broadband in the Cook County area as matching funds for the grant given by the state of Illinois. The Chicago Southland Fiber Network is going to be the end result of about $6.1 million worth of primary spending from the state. In addition, there will be $10 million of spending done by Cook County. Some of that is already in place, including links going into Stroger Hospital to the Cook County Criminal Justice Campus at 26 in California. There's a downtown ring that's been already implemented as a result of the Cook County spending on broadband plan to support county and efficiency of government. So that was part of the program. Next slide, please. The economic development components of the fiber that's going in is really trying to take a region that's been impacted by the downturn in the economy. The biggest issue was the 80s downturn in the steel industry across the Southland region. As pointed out there, there's still rampant high unemployment. There's significant areas of brownfields that have fallen into disrepair. And one of the things that we believe that the fiber footprint will do is draw new attention to reuse and to bringing jobs and companies and programs into the area. And then, of course, the Chicago Southland and the Harvey area already is a focus for the transportation industry. They have, Canadian National has a large recent investment in an intermodal facility, and our fiber footprint will serve not one but two intermodal terminals, including the Canadian National and the Union Pacific intermodal sites. If you look at that statement at the bottom, Pew Research didn't say broadband is the key catalyst. They just said broadband is a key catalyst of economic development. We are putting that philosophy to work here, and we believe that our investment will pay off in the long run. Next slide. Some of the other impact that we believe that this broadband plant will have on the region is, as with many other publicly funded networks, some of the low-hanging fruit, some of the initial users of this broadband plant will be public sector institutions. We're already running to the courthouses, to hospitals, to healthcare clinics, to public safety and joint dispatch centers, to municipal centers of government, fire stations, police stations for their use. We really believe that that broadband is an important part of efficiency of government, and with funding mechanisms being such as they are, anything that you can use to leverage your public manpower out there is going to be a good thing. The South Suburban Airport footprint is, as most of you know, the property acquisition is continuing to be funded. Our fiber footprint ends at Offner Road, that will be the primary road leading into the South Suburban Airport footprint. We're positioned to help support that area also and provide backhaul and fiber connectivity for the airport itself, along with all of the transportation business and industry investments that go along with an airport of that type. The Ileana project is continuing to be in the news. It depends on which side, I believe, of the Chicago and rest of the state border you're on, but the Ileana project has continued to be an area where we believe that the state will invest. This project is positioned well to support any economic development opportunity and investment that may happen along the Ileana corridor if and when that project goes forward. Next slide, please. The Chicago Southland fiber network really is putting to work all those tenets that we talk about so much of the time. We believe that fiber makes a difference in economic development. It supports existing business development, helps keep those folk in the area, helps support expansion of those folk. Education during our research phase for this project was one of the areas that really was in a vacuum for high bandwidth connectivity. The fiber network immediately starts putting high bandwidth at an available, affordable price into our educational facilities. Healthcare is one of the things that starts going away when an area goes into economic decline. Hospitals and clinics move out of the area. Broadband provides some of the bridge mechanisms to continue to provide high quality healthcare in an area as a result of having broadband connectivity available. We really do believe that this fiber footprint that is going in place will help support making broadband services available and affordable, and making improving the quality of life for the Chicago Southland region. Next slide. Just a couple of construction pics. The blue duct is the Chicago Southland Fiber Network duct. The orange is a CMS duct. Again, part of our efficiency of and getting the best bang for the dollar was to do construction concurrently with what CMS was up to. That is one of the photos of that principle in action. And of course, next slide. We really are happy with blue. It looks great out there. That's it's part of our bragging rights for the Chicago Southland area. That duct, by the way, all has fiber pulled in it and tested and in operation today. Next slide. The collaboration in order to make this network happen really was a whole bunch of folk helping to take an idea and run with it and supporting the project. Again, I mentioned we lobbied the governor's office. They were strong supporters for funding this project. Cook County has been a great partner in the process. SSMMA has been the primary principal in leading the project charge. ICN and CMS had, again, supported us through use of engineering documentation and continues to support the Chicago Southland fiber network and recommendations and providing references for us to provide connectivity to everyone from libraries and schools and municipal centers of government. I mentioned IDOT on here. IDOT was Illinois Department of Transportation was happy to provide us with right-of-way and permitting, and right now our first 5 years of right-of-way is being funded by the trade-out of fiber with them. We are going to be providing traffic light support and communication support for IDOT in trade for them allowing us to place fiber and duct alongside Illinois state highways. Next slide, please. So here's what we believe the opportunity is. The fiber network, that fiber footprint, provides the foundation for high-speed connectivity to schools and colleges and healthcare and all of those other institutions that that we're talking about reaching. Next slide. But we're really only getting started. This is the slide that we started out with, showing the current footprint, the current construction activity that's going on. But the reality is, next slide. While this map just looks like a shotgun blast on paper here, this is the 450 institutions that we had talked to when we first started the research for this project. That's our goal for this region. That's just 42 municipalities in the south side of Chicago. That bigger picture of who we're trying to reach really is the driving activity. We need to be able to figure out how to fund a broader infrastructure than what we can put in place today, because this is a better example of the real need in the SSMMA and Chicago Southland fiber network footprint. Next slide. This comment came out of, I believe, the 2010 FCC National Broadband Plan, and it says broadband is a foundation for economic growth. Again, we are putting every one of those principles into play with the Chicago Southland fiber network. We believe that it's a game changer. We're putting fiber into the places where people can access and use that fiber to make a difference in the community where they work, where they live, where they invest. And we really do believe that we are part of that that platform, that infrastructure that can make a difference to the communities that it will serve. One of the exciting things about the conference coming up in November is that we realize, as this network is put in place, that we really are just getting started. 70 miles of fiber does not reach everyone, but we believe that we have a good start on the conversation, and we are really in hopes that those other folk who have ideas and ways of getting the job done will come and talk and continue the conversation and help us to move the goal of broadband connectivity for more areas, more regions on down the road. Thanks for listening, and I'll pass it back to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Rusty, for the presentation. With that, I will actually pass it off to Matt Parks, the Senior Director of Network and Communication Services at Northern Illinois University, and the Project Director for the iFiber Initiative IBOP Northwest Project. So with that, Matt.
Thank you, Clayton, and thank you, Jeff, for having me here today and for the introduction. So as Jeff indicated, my name is Matt Parks. I'm Senior Director of Network and Communication Services here at Northern Illinois University, and I also play a leadership role in the overall project implementation of one of the projects I'll speak to today, what we call iFiber. Next slide. For NIU, Clayton, you can hit that once. For NIU, we've been involved in broadband going back probably about 10 years, and really it came out of a necessity to improve our kind of operating expenditure structure with transport from NIU's DeKalb main campus to our outreach centers in kind of the suburban areas of northern Illinois. At the time, as you might imagine, we were riding T1s and T3s and had a fairly significant cost structure associated with that. And in an effort to try to look for opportunities to reduce that and improve our overall capacity and utilization of network traffic and voice services, we looked at something which is fairly common now, which is called dark fiber, and essentially to turn up a network that we would manage on our own, and that was the genesis of NIUNet. NIUNet today, 10 years in, is a 40 gigabit. It's a 10 gigabit ring with a 40 gigabits link from DeKalb to Chicago that will enhance the university's presence. It is our gateway to the world, so to speak, between our DeKalb campus and the internet. It supports our connectivity to Internet 2. We are, with our recent upgrade of a 40 gigabit circuit, we're going to increase our Internet 2 presence to 10 gig. And this is now allowing us to partner much more within the university with our research organization to utilize high-speed transport capabilities to enhance the delivery of all sorts of research projects. So we're now beginning the process of utilizing NIUNet for more R&D purposes, but really that's where we cut our teeth in the power of broadband and what it could do for an institution, along with supporting local schools and municipalities. We do actually connect up a few municipalities and schools in the northern Illinois region, and with the iFiber and DeKalb County project I'll speak to shortly, we're expanding that reach as well with NIUNet too. So again, that's the genesis of it. That culminated in a number of municipal partnerships over the years. And Clayton, if you just want to hit the thing and go through all of these, we've been associated with a project called the Illinois Municipal Broadband Communications Association, the Northern Illinois Technology Triangle, Tri-Light Net, Northwest Municipal Broadband Authority. And without going into depth in specifically what each one of those organizations is about, generally or broadly, these are partnerships between NIU and municipal and or not-for-profit government entities at utilizing or leveraging broadband to enhance services in the region, right? Whether it's to a school, to a municipality, or a group of municipalities for the purposes of economic development, lowering public sector cost structures, all of those things. And then that led us to something I'll spend a fair amount of time here on, which is with regards to the DeKalb County project and the iFiber project. So again, from NIU's perspective, it started with NIUNet, and then we started to partner and do a lot of outreach within the Northern Illinois region with municipal government and nonprofits to grow and utilize and leverage broadband. And then the stimulus funding came in with the ERA funding, and that led to these BTOP grants, which I'll spend some time speaking with as well. Next slide. And last but not least is the Illinois Rural Health Network that Jeff alluded to earlier. So this is a 1,000-mile plus network statewide that connects up rural hospitals for the purposes of, electronic health records, telemedicine, and telehealth. Right? If you can imagine hospitals throughout the state of Illinois there's a lot of rural areas in the state, a lot of hospitals that just have problems with access to high-speed broadband. This grant and this project was developed and has been implemented to solve that problem, to allow these rural hospitals and clinics to have anywhere from 100 megabit to gigabit or beyond type of speeds for the purposes of telemedicine, telehealth. And again, from a healthcare standpoint, this kind of network is a game changer for what hospitals and clinics can do that were in locations of the state that just did not have access to it otherwise. Next slide. So on the BTOP projects, the data network, what we call the DeKalb Advancement of Technology Authority project, this was a 130-mile, give or take, project in DeKalb County. The grant was awarded back in 2000, I think it was first quarter 2010, for just under $15 million, a combination between the federal government and the state of Illinois, connecting over 70 community anchor institutions, that's schools, libraries, municipal government, the county itself, police, fire, and 911 to this gigabit network infrastructure. It was a public-private partnership, so this was testing our ability not only to pursue these grants and obtain them, but also to leverage public and private partnerships to deliver on the promise of what broadband can be and do. DeKalb County was the grant recipient for it. Obviously, NIU was a partner with DeKalb County at the overall design of the network and implementation and the grant writing and so on. And then a local company called DeKalb Fiber Optic, or DFO, was a private company that we partnered with to actually implement the fiber and connect everything up. And so as we sit here today, I'm happy to report that that project is now complete. The grant is in the process of being closed. It's about 130 miles all in, connecting at this point. I think we're at about 75 or 76 anchor institutions that have been served by gigabit connectivity across the board. So we're quite proud. It just closed literally within the last few weeks, and we're quite proud of that. It's a big accomplishment for the county, for the public-private partnership, and of course for Northern Illinois. Next slide. You'll see in a minute how iFiber and data play together, but the second grant that NIU was involved in, this was a round 2 award. The DeKalb County project was a round 1. So this was awarded back in late Q3 2010, much larger project connecting up 9 counties in Northwest Illinois, $68.5 million project, again funded combination between the federal government, the state of Illinois, and private partners, connecting up close to 500 community anchor institutions. So similar model to what DeKalb County was doing, just on a larger scale. NIU was the grant recipient for the project, but we had many partners right out of the gates, and those partners have stayed with us throughout the entire project. LaSalle County, North Central Illinois Council of Government, which is an economic development agency based down in LaSalle County, the city of Rockford, Winnebago County, Boone County, Black Hawk Hills Regional Council have all been a consortium of folks that have been together working on this project. They all formed, while NIU was the grant recipient, all of these entities together formed a company called iFiber, which is an Illinois nonprofit that will own and operate the network. All told, it's a 915-mile network. About 600 miles of that is new underground build. But close to 300 is IRU, or leased miles, that we found along the way, and then there's about 30 some odd miles of wireless point-to-point connectivity that we're using to deliver last mile to a number of schools and libraries and so on in the rural part of the network. It does span 9 counties. Again, think of Northwest Illinois. We do extend down into LaSalle County. And then if you want to hit the next slide, Clayton, I'll give you a quick update overall where we're at. All of our permits are in. The network itself from an underground is all in. We're just in the process of finalizing all of our splicing. And within the next, we're actually 40%, 45% deployed in terms of our anchor institutions. And through the remainder of the year, we will look to close that gap to get it to 100%. So we're really focused right now on finalizing the remaining splices and working on the anchor institution deployment in the remaining portions of the network, and aggressively working to close on our anchor institution contracts. So we have visibility to 100% on the contracts, and again, over the next 60 to 90 days, we will close those out as well. Next slide. So this is where it all kind of comes together. You can find this map on iFiber.org. Just look under the map section of the website. The purple is, of course, the iFiber network. The orange portion of this network is the DeKalb County network. They were designed essentially to support each other, and so it's one virtual network from a network design and connectivity and configuration standpoint. So again, we've got 900 and some 50 miles or so on the iFiber network, connecting into about 130 miles on the data network to make one large virtual network. You can see a few of the wireless links that we've got in red on that map, connecting to a few of the more rural areas of the project. Next slide. This is just a high-level diagram to illustrate the logical configuration of the network. So the blue node locations of Rockford, DeKalb, Peru, Savannah, and Shannon represent our core network infrastructure. We've got a 100 gigabit ring. We'll be passing through that. 80% of that ring is operational right now. We've got one leg left to finish, and then that 100 gigabit ring, fully redundant ring, will be in place within the next probably 45 days. And then all of the green connectivity off of those core is really our distribution connectivity down into the anchor institutions themselves. So it's a distributed network. It's a flat network. It's a high-capacity network. I call it a 21st century network in the region. Next slide. So kind of transition here to why do we do this? What are the value? What's the value proposition both from a technology standpoint, but also a use case? As I said, I call this 21st century speeds. We're giving gigabit to every entity on this network, whether it's a small library in Joe Davies County or a large school district in Rockford. They're getting a gigabit lit port into the iFiber and data infrastructure. This allows for what we call kind of cloud function or intranet function. So a high capacity network allows all of these different entities that are on the network to collaborate with each other so they can consolidate their functions. We all know if you've got a school district out there with limited access to bandwidth, they might need to keep hardware local to a particular building because they don't have the capacity, the bandwidth to move that out to the cloud or to other buildings. This network now allows them to consolidate and think more strategically where they put their hardware, software, or said a different way, their applications out into the cloud and to partner with other school districts or other libraries or other like entities. It really promotes collaboration. We're at the front end of this thing. A lot of the school district LAN admins can now, going forward, work together on how best to utilize this network and how they might be able to consolidate and share best practices and so on. We improve efficiencies with this. So this network they'll be able to purchase internet services, but they'll be able to purchase a whole host of application services as well, including phones. So your typical school district that's got a legacy phone system, it's a costly system that usually they're limited with how many lines they've deployed because of the cost structure associated with that. We can replace that with a voice over IP solution off of this network that maybe not reduce the top line cost, but in some cases we can do that, which is very important, but also we can increase the proliferation of phones into the school districts to provide better access to the teachers and just the educators in general at access to voice. And really just innovation, right? The P20 programs, this allows for a whole host of applications and functions and capabilities that were just on the tip of the iceberg in terms of our abilities to leverage for use in the region. Next slide. So on the innovation front, we hear a lot in our outreach with the communities, especially in the education side, of one-to-one iPads. So really trying to leverage technology between the teacher and the student to improve the educational experience. That's really hard to do if you don't have the infrastructure in place. This solves that problem, right? So that's number one. Some of the, I mentioned on a slide earlier about consolidation and collaboration. That really gets to hosted services or the cloud, right? So we can push applications up to the cloud or to an intranet with high-speed access to those applications, like it's in the same building, and it could be literally hundreds of miles away or the school district next door. And again, the feeling is the same. So again, it really changes the game how we collaborate and can host and offsite our functions. Online educational subscriptions, again, right? So in the education space, even fire departments for training. We have an example in one of the local fire departments of, they used to send their folks out to do training offsite. Now we could pull that media down. There's less of a need for the travel and expense on budgets and for the travel to go to classes, where these days we can bring them to the location. So again, I think that we're on the front end of what these capabilities are, but the ability to pull media down, high def streaming media, and just content down is quite powerful, and an area where I think we'll see a lot of movement. Next slide. On the public safety front, an example here is DeKalb County transitioned their entire backhaul legacy infrastructure system to a completely buried fiber optic infrastructure with gigabit speeds and much more lower maintenance costs. So again, they had a legacy infrastructure. I think it was piece parted together with different technologies, some wireless, some T1 style transport, to a complete fiber optic gigabit network that they're able to take forward with them. This allows them to partner with other larger regional public safety networks as backup off-siting function, and it will facilitate the move to the next gen 911, which I think, I'm hearing a lot about in the different, as we work to implement this project about where 911's going. A lot of folks are focused on next gen 911, what it means to them. These networks will come out of the gates ready to be able to support that type of capacity and function. Next slide. And just some general success stories to wrap up. As you saw the map, this is in Northwest Illinois. Northwest Illinois is a rural part of the state. We've, as part of the DeKalb County project, connected up a number of farms for agribusiness functions. We've got different small businesses in rural part of the network that do photography, videography, audiovisual design work that they're able to get. That's technology stuff, and they need high-speed access, network access to be able to effectively do what they do. These networks provide that. We're doing a whole host of stuff with hospitals in partnership with IRHN, but also within the iFiber and DeKalb County footprints with lit services to hospitals, but they're also leveraging a lot of dark fiber off of these networks to be able to connect up their own private networks. We're beginning the discussion with financial institutions, banks, and so forth in the region for lit managed services, but also dark fiber between their branch offices. Again, I think this is going to be an area that we see a lot of growth in the 10-county region of this network. We want these networks, iFiber and DeKalb County project, the data network, to be enablers of enhanced 3G and 4G wireless network coverage, right? So part of the reason 4G lags in rural areas is the return on the cost of the transport to get out there, right? Again, these places are not rich with high capacity bandwidth. This solves that problem. We now have low cost, high capacity dark fiber lit network that these wireless entities, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and so forth, can leverage to expand the footprint of their 4G services to cover the communities in the region. And I think just a couple others, business retention. We've had a lot of businesses say, if these kind of broadband networks weren't happening, if they were making the decision of where to land their business, they might not do so in this region if we didn't have the fiber. So today, broadband is the table stakes, okay? With DeKalb County, Northwest Illinois, we are a fiber hub now. We are very rich in fiber now, and that presents a whole host of opportunities on the data center front. We hear a lot of stuff that's going on out in Iowa and Nebraska with data centers. We anticipate something similar can happen here, and we hope to be able to enable it there. And we are Metro E compliant, and that's kind of a techie thing, but it's a big deal because it puts us on the map, and these networks are real viable networks for other nationwide style carriers and partners to come interact with. So I think that's it for me. I know there's going to be questions later on. Clayton, I mentioned you. I've got to drop, but it was a pleasure walking through some of the NIU projects with everybody here. If there are questions, Clayton will get them to me, and I'll make sure they get answered. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matt, for the presentation. With that, we will leave Northern Illinois and move down to East Central Illinois. Major project down in that part of the state, Metro Communications. And I will unmute the president of Metro Communications Company, Zach Horn. So, Zach.
Thank you, Clayton. I appreciate the opportunity today to speak to everybody about our project. Enjoyed learning so much about what goes on in Northern Illinois. We're kind of isolated here in Central Illinois and forget that so many exciting things go on. I've heard of iFiber and the Southland project, but I feel like I understand them a lot better now, so I enjoyed that. I'll just start off by telling a little bit about who we are. Thank you. We're a small private telecommunications provider, and the network map that you see here is a project that started in 2009 and 10 to build fiber network across East Central Illinois for a number of purposes. The dots on the map indicate our POPs or hubs, but the laterals span out in a pretty dense fashion across East Central Illinois, especially from Bloomington to the Indiana border, and then across the southeast there. And next slide. So who we are, actually we're a small firm, like I mentioned. We were founded in 1993 by a gentleman from Iowa who was part of Teleconnect and later MCI and McLeod. And he started a small business after he retired. He was 70 years old and started a small resale business, reselling toll basically in the Midwest to many telephone companies. And I acquired the business in 2000, and we basically have set about becoming a facilities-based provider of voice services over the last decade. We have a gen band switch, which we operate TDM, SS7, and IP interfaces, interconnects rather, mostly out of Chicago to tandem voice services and toll services for small independent telephone companies and cellular providers and other wholesalers. And that business has been a strong business, and it's grown for us over the last decade. And our relationships with some independent cellular providers prompted us to start the fiber business in 2009 and 10. We are only 7 people in our core business unit, but we have a good number of construction folks that are here for the fiber project. Next slide, please. So what we're building is actually a fairly large network, and it's very rural in nature. It touches a number of urban cores, specifically Bloomington, Decatur, Springfield, Danville, Champaign, are probably the largest cities that we go through, and we do have a presence in each one of those. But we also have a presence in a lot of very small towns, 5,000 to 20,000 people, Lawrenceville, Newton, Sullivan, Bethany, Monticello, a lot of very small towns that probably the northern folks have not heard of. And they're the roll up the sidewalks at night kind of places. But in terms of high-speed connectivity, they really have been lacking. So that was our opportunity to create this network. When we're done, it will be around 1,200 miles, maybe a little more than that actually. 800 or 900 of it is new non-IRU construction that started between 2011. We probably have about 400 or 500 miles on the ground today, and we have another probably 18 months of construction remaining. Mostly the network is an Ethernet network. We use Cyan for our packet optical core, which has proved to be an excellent platform. It's DWDMs and ROADMs, really a modern 21st century network. We use Obsidian's Metro NIDs at the premise and in the cell towers and places like that, and Cisco and Adtran for our legacy Sonnet network. And all of this, here's our Northern Illinois connection, is anchored by our POPs at 350 Cermak and 427 South LaSalle in Chicago. So that really is our connectivity in and out of the network for non-cell backhaul related applications. Next slide, please. So construction is extremely important to us because that's how we keep our costs down. There's a huge amount of costs, obviously, in the network construction portion of this, and our objective has been to master that and to root out all of the fat and unnecessary costs. And I feel we've done a good job of that. And towards that end, we do better than half of our network construction ourselves. So we use Vermeer P185 cable plows, which are large steel track plows that can put in 3 to 5 miles of conduit in a day. We do much of the drilling ourselves in-house. All of our engineering has been supported by Finley Engineering, which is a traditional ILEC engineering firm, and they've done a phenomenal job and engineered 700 plus miles in probably just a little over 24 or 36 months. And so our engineering is nearing completion. The cable counts we put in are probably a little different from the northern projects, just because we don't require a whole lot of count for cell tower drops and laterals and whatnot. Many of the places we go, we joke that there's not a business opportunity there unless the corn and the cows are buying transport or Ethernet services. We pass a lot of miles, and a lot of them are relatively empty in terms of core anchor institutions or potential customers for high capacity lit services. When we do build the network, we do add in a handhold once every mile for our future access and cable storage. One of the things that is important to us is that restoration is done quickly, so that's why we built everything in conduit and placed storage every mile or so, so that we don't have to do 2 slices if we were to get hit. And we also collect all the GIS data off the plant, which is how we do our Julies. So we're able to eliminate roughly 85% of the Julies without a truck roll, which goes towards cost reduction. Next slide, please. This is just an example of one of our prints. We have both CAD and Visio prints. The reason we have Visio is because traditionally we're not engineering folks, we're telecom folks, and so we're having difficulty with CAD. This is kind of embarrassing to say early on, so we use Visio as an easy way to modify our prints in-house when necessary. Next slide. For those of you that are familiar with the projects and the BTOP and ARRA projects, this is a State of Illinois IDOT permit for placing conduit on the public right-of-way, and about half of our network is built on state highway right-of-ways. The other half is on county and township and municipal roads. But we do go through the permit process just like everyone else who places anything in the right-of-way, and we've done the vast majority of that in-house, which is gone to cost reduction. Next slide, please. This is a P185 cable plow. It hasn't been manufactured since 1999, but it's probably the most productive cable plow of its class out there. They're hard to find, and anyone familiar with underground construction will probably not dispute the productivity of this machine is significant. Steel tracks and weighs about 15 tons. It really can put a tremendous amount of conduit in, and it's very productive, and it's really suited for a rural build because of its steel track configuration. It's has to be matted across the roads, and it's not ideal for an urban environment where there's a lot of pavement, but very productive. Next slide, please. Another picture of a P185 plow. I guess I included 2 pictures of that because it's probably how 70% of our conduit gets placed is by plowing, which again goes towards cost reduction. Next slide. I included this slide actually, I guess with a humorous tone. The gentleman on there is Nick Lawyer, and it obviously is snowing out. And we've worked through pretty much every condition you can think of in an effort to try to deliver services as quickly as possible, mostly to the cellular providers who are demanding and in need of capacity for 4G LTE services. Next slide, please. Since all of our construction is done in conduit, we have to place the fiber via blowing, just like probably most of the projects in Northern Illinois. We have no direct buried cable, and so as a result, we end up figurating a lot of cable on the roadside as we place it. Our blow crew is, we have 2 of them. They're 4-man crews, and on a good day, they can put in 5 to 7 miles of cable. I feel that we've done a good job there at achieving some solid efficiency and maintaining a really good rhythm over the last couple of years. Next slide, please. This is a panel, and to the right, next to the yellow conduit, is the City and Metro NID. It's a very compact 1 gigabit Metro Ethernet compliant device that goes in all the cell towers and remote locations, and has proved to be a really solid, low-cost device for supporting 102 meg to a gigabit services in rural environments. Next slide. This box is our Cyan Metro or packet optical core box. The top 2 shelves are DWDM multiplexers, and the bottom shelves are our Ethernet cards with XFP, 10 gig XFP ports. The next generation of cards that we're going to be installing are 100 gig cards. Though I think that may be a little much for a rural network. We just don't have the demands probably that the northern folks do. Next slide. This is a slice case, actually a fairly busy one. We do a lot of, like I said, 24, 48 count fiber. And for the most part, by using CWDM and DWDM, we really only use 2 or 4 fibers on the path. So we do a lot of butt splices with long cable reels, and we cross a lot of miles that don't have anything in it. Next slide, please. This is just an example of our GIS plant. This is a cell tower in Villa Grove, Illinois. You can see lots of empty farm ground there with a homestead and a cell tower in the southwest corner. And GISing that plant really is helpful because we can eliminate so many Julie tickets safely. Next slide. So the customers we're serving with this network are probably much like the folks for iFiber and IBOP-NW. The vast majority is cell backhaul, which is probably different from the stimulus grant networks, but we do also serve education, government, healthcare. Many of the places we pass don't have access to the ARRA networks, and there's almost exclusively only copper services to many of the schools in East Central Illinois. So by and large, when we build past them, we're able to contract with them to provide connectivity back to the state CMS network via a number of POPs currently in Champaign. And it's really been a good working relationship. The school benefits because we are an E-rate provider, and we can provide connectivity to state CMS network. They receive the state CMS support, and many of the schools that we're serving, I think, are benefiting greatly from those services, which is pleasing to us. Plus, it's good incremental revenue since we are a private funded network with obligations to repay. We also provide wavelengths, dark fiber, and Ethernet transport to enterprise, wholesale applications, pretty much anyone that we pass. And the connectivity to Chicago and hopefully to future networks, or in the future to networks like iFiber and state CMS through downstate POPs and Chicago POPs, I'm hoping will be good for both us and our potential customers. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this is probably a little redundant here, but lots of point-to-point, point-to-multipoint Ethernet services, TDM connectivity to a lot of the rural COs in downstate Illinois, especially in the southeastern part of the state, which is mostly for Frontier, former Verizon service area, and some AT&T with a good number of independents mixed in there. We do provide our IP transit via Chicago, currently at 427 South LaSalle, and we're going to increase our presence in the 350 Cermak POP here later this year and the first half of next year. As we mentioned, connectivity to the state CMS network is through our POP in Champaign. And our co-location facilities through our shelters in Decatur, Champaign, Sullivan, and Springfield really is going to be helpful for independent cable providers, independent telcos, and other folks coming off the state CMS network that may need to branch out and regen. So we're hoping that those get utilized in the future. Basically, this is just what our objective is in building this network and where we're going with it long term. We want to increment the revenue from the asset that's being constructed today over the next 5 years. I think it's probably unlikely that we will see construction over the next 5 years that matches what's been completed in the last 2 or 3 years. It's really been done at an extremely fast pace, and there's been a lot of cable put in the ground, and I don't foresee that the demand being there to add that much going forward. We are focused on reducing our legacy cost network over the next couple of years by incrementing services, DS3s and whatnot, from resold OCX level services onto our network, and and to lower our cost for the voice business, which is a highly competitive business. The last part I think is probably the most important thing to us, really. We are very customer focused. We are here to serve the wireless providers and enterprises and schools and education organizations that we pass. And we are a very small firm. We are in Central Illinois serving the residents and the citizens of Central Illinois, and we're very committed to that. We really have a hardworking, very capable group of people that run this small carrier, and we would like to serve as many of the people as we pass because it's important to us, and they obviously have needs to be met. And we want to do that free of bureaucracy. Everyone here is empowered to make decisions, though we do a lot of things in a collaborative environment. We really strive to be as efficient as possible and keep our overhead down so we can compete with the Frontiers, the Mediacoms, and even today the state CMS network and the stimulus networks that we touch to compete with them, because that is the objective of all that money, is to offer competition. So we're excited about what we've constructed, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share who we are and what we're doing with everyone that's listening today, and I look forward to answering questions or having discussions about it in the future. Thank you, Clayton.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Zach. I'm going to click off here quick. Alrighty. Since we are pushed up next to 2 o'clock a little bit, we'll take just a couple questions. I think we didn't take any in the last one, and had a lot come in afterwards. So I do have one here, and I will open it up to. I guess I'll unmute Rusty if that's okay, because I think that Zach addressed this during his presentation. But an individual has asked, are all the networks presenting today Julie members? Matt Parks did have to leave from iFiber, but I will unmute Rusty. Rusty is the SSMMA project a Julie member?
Yes.
Excellent.
No, it's just one of those basic tenets of putting fiber in the ground. If you don't locate it, you're not really doing justice to the business of fiber connectivity.
Alrighty. I will unmute you, Zach. Did you have anything you wanted to add as well?
I'm sorry, Clayton, did you direct that towards me?
You mentioned during your presentation that you were, of course, a Julie member. I believe that was the case. Is that correct?
Yes, we are actually. I think it's the single most important thing that we do post-construction because we've hit a lot of utilities in the course of construction. I'm proud to say that it's mostly not our fault. And protection is huge towards network operation and providing reliable service. So in fact, I don't think there's anything that is more important post-construction than making sure that the Julies get done and located properly, which requires some degree of planning in terms of making sure things are grounded and making sure the maps are set up correctly to Julie and whatnot. I think it's just absolutely critical.
Perfect. One more question. I'll leave both Rusty and Zach unmuted here. Are end-user institutions allowed to share with SOHO neighbors? Comments from anybody?
I can say from a Metro communication standpoint, we don't have a problem with that. It's not really technically possible. We provide point-to-point Ethernet services for the cell phone providers, and those services terminate at the mobile telephone switching office, mostly in Springfield on one side, and then the cell tower on another. So we don't have a problem with it. It just isn't really technically an option, unfortunately.
We're operating the Chicago Southland fiber network as an open network. If there is a need for fiber connectivity, if there's a need for bandwidth connectivity, and you have a legitimate need and can participate in the cost of operating the network, we will provide connectivity for you.
Excellent. Rusty, this one's for you. Is the Chicago Southland network dark fiber, or is it a lit network, and is it already lit with optoelectronics, routers, DWDM? I think you mentioned this during the presentation, but the individual acknowledges he may have missed it.
CSFN provides both dark fiber connectivity and lit services. We are a Sienna-based network, and all of our end nodes as being installed right now are 1 gigabit nodes. Our fiber backbone is dual 10 gigs to start out with, and we are in hopes to scale up from there. But yes, we are providing lit services across that network.
Excellent. Time for maybe one more quick question. Got a question from someone else. What is a legitimate need? What if I want to run a killer game center? It's a great question. Can anybody define what you mean when you say legitimate need as part of your business plans?
You know, illegitimate would be easier to define. I don't think the call girl service probably is something we'd consider a legitimate connectivity need, at least across fiber. But as far as communications go, business, industry, intermodal sites, public sector services of all kinds, education, hospitals, healthcare, libraries, those are the top of the list of legitimate needs, and everything else is referenced off from that.
Alrighty. There are a couple other questions, but I think that we will go ahead, and if you have any other questions, feel free to email us. Respond to us at webinar@broadbandillinois.org. Again, that's webinar@broadbandillinois.org, and we can go ahead and make sure your questions get to the right person. So with that, I want to thank the speakers, and I'm going to pass it back to Jeff Ryman, President of Broadband Communities, who can provide us with some closing comments. So, Jeff. Oh, I unmuted the wrong person. There we go. Jeff, are you there? Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you for everybody again for joining us. Sorry we weren't able to address all the questions, but again, we will be going into more detail. This was just an introduction to the topics that will be discussed at length at the upcoming conference. So we do have a great program planned. Again, this were just a few of the topics that we'll go into further detail on. Our primary goal is to provide educational networking opportunities that will help advance broadband initiatives throughout the Midwest. Again, the conference begins Tuesday, November 5th. We have interactive workshops on that Tuesday beginning at 12 noon. Under any other circumstances, these workshops would in and of themselves justify high dollar registration for each individual session, but attendance to these workshops is included at no additional charge to all conference registrants. So I certainly hope you do choose to take advantage of these rich educational opportunities. These networks are most successful when business residents, community anchor institutions in a region understand the benefits that the advanced broadband infrastructure enables. So with that, we hope that you also encourage attendance by your colleagues, counterparts, businesses, school, library officials in your region to help better advance the regional initiatives that are underway. Again, the more people that recognize the value will subscribe to the network, which promotes the sustainability of those networks. So please do register, bbcmag.com/Chicago. Click register, general admission, use discount code Chicago now for the $150 registration rate. That rate does increase next week, so please take advantage of that. Next slide. And finally, learn more on the conference homepage as well. Complete agenda. You'll see we have representatives from across the country representing different industries, different levels of government, but of course the main focus there on the Midwest region. Hotel venue information as well, flight information. So hopefully everything you have is there. Otherwise, feel free to call the Broadband Communities office with any specific questions as well, 702-405-7004. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing everybody November 5th there in Chicago. Thank you so much for Partnership to Connecting Illinois for organizing this webinar, and we are looking forward just a few weeks out.